What a wild and wet week we've had. From hungry calls to barnyard brawls. And there's plenty more to come.
And I'm on the very northern tip of Britain to see a bird with bags of attitude.
And at the end of the show yesterday, we left Steve sleeping at the top of an oak tree. Did he survive the night? Come to think of it, I've not seen him all day, have you? Oh my goodness, there's jeopardy, there's excitement, there's adventure, and of course there's plenty of fabulous wildlife. It's Springwatch!
Don't want to be out there. It's absolutely pouring down. Absolutely pouring down. Oh, hello and welcome to Springwatch. It's the last of our programmes this week, coming to you live from the Sherborne Park estate in Gloucestershire, run by the National Trust, 4,000 acres of mixed farmland, and providing us with loads and loads of wildlife and loads of rain. It's been pouring down over the last hour and a half here. Absolutely pouring.
We've had thunder, we've had lightning, it was sunny earlier on, it's been a very confusing day. It obviously makes us very wet, but what does it do for our birds? Well, let's have a look at a couple of the nests live, in particular the ones that are a little bit more vulnerable maybe. Let's first of all have a look at the wren's nest. Obviously that's outside, you might think that it's going to get very wet, but that is a wonderful dome shape and it's very thick and cosy in there, and those little chicks look perfectly fine to me, so they should be all right, shouldn't they?
Sheltered by the ivy, domed nest, like you say, pretty good. What about the goldcrest, though? This tiny, fragile little nest hung there in the spruce, dangling by some spiders' webs, is completely open. 8 young, we think there are in there, 8 of them. They're still moving, but they must have got a drenching. In fact, they do look a little bit wet, don't they?
Yeah. So we're certainly going to have to keep our eyes on that over the weekend. Well, it's lovely weather for ducks. Let's have a look at our mandarin duck. And it's not there. And when we went to this camera live yesterday...
Every time you say, let's look at the mandarin duck, it's not there.
It wasn't there. Mandy the mandarin has gone. But let me tell you, it did come back last night. Look, just to prove that it did. There she is. She's in that nest with those 15 eggs. And this seems quite typical behaviour. About this time of night, she goes off for about an hour to an hour and a half. So that's perfectly normal. And as I say, perfect weather for ducks. She's probably thoroughly enjoying the rain.
Nice dry nest as well. And we do have a guarantee of another nice dry nest because it's in one of our boxes that we put up for the birds especially. It's our blue tip. Let's take a look inside there. Well, there's a bit of rain on the lens, but nothing inside there. A bit of a damp adult there, but look, the young are all doing very well inside. There's no less than 11 of them there, 11 of these birds. And the adults have been extremely busy, in and out all of the time. Let's take a look, because we can actually tell the difference between the two adults. Now, look at this bird. Very bright blue on the wings and bold blue on the cap with white cheeks. We think that that's the male, and he's at least a couple of years old. This bird, when it comes in, look, it's much greyer on those secondary coverts, much dirtier looking birds. So the one on the left we think's the male, and if you look at its secondary coverts, they're very bright blue. The females are dusky grey. So we're actually able to tell the difference between the two sexes. I say we, actually Jack Badams, one of our story developers, who's also a ringer, was able to separate those two sexes. Top knowledge, Jack. Thank you very much, because it allows us to analyse who's doing the feeding.
He also told us that she's quite young, probably a first-time mum.
First-year bird, yeah.
And look, I've got a question from you. It's come from Twitter, from Rose. How do parents know which one to feed first? Can she identify all the chicks as individuals?
Well, Rose, different species have different strategies. If you've got a predictable and therefore a favourable food resource, the birds then collect the food, and when they go back to the nest, they tend to feed the youngster, which is begging most. But if the resource is unpredictable and therefore sometimes unfavourable, when they go back to the nest, they tend to feed the fittest bird, the one that's in best condition, perhaps the biggest one. So which category do our blue tits fit into? Well, we know they've been doing a great job of bringing lots of caterpillars in, so it sounds like it's favourable, but then it's unpredictable, because what's happened in the last hour and a half here is that this tremendously heavy rain has washed all of those tiny geometrid, tortricid moth caterpillars off of the oak trees, and at this point in time our blue tits are going to find it a lot harder to find them. So when they do come in, they're probably more likely to feed it to the biggest, fittest chicks, and therefore sometimes we see the development of a staggered brood size and we find runts, and that's what we do see in our blue tits.
We haven't seen that yet with this brood, though, have we? There are 11 mouths to feed, and they're all extremely hungry. You could see them all. They're all begging there. In fact, that's the female coming in now,
and what's interesting, Michaela, if they don't beg when the female comes in, she will elicit a call which instigates begging so that she can then feed them. But she registers the fact that they're not that hungry. And when she next goes hunting, she doesn't just grab the first caterpillar. She actually spends the time looking for better quality food, which in the case of blue tits is spiders. And we know that broods of blue tits which are fed on more spiders have a better body condition before they fledge the nest.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating. But as I say, there are 11 healthy chicks in there at the moment, and the parents have been doing really well. But there is something that our nest watchers have noticed, and remember, they're watching these nests 20 hours a day, which, by the way, you can as well, online and on the red button. And this is what they've noticed, that, well, last night, for instance, between 6 and 7 p.m, there were 48 feeds. Now, the male did 15 of them, and the female did 33 of them. And as they've been watching every day, that seems quite consistent, that the female, she's almost like a supermum. She's doing a lot more of the feeding than the male. She's doing a fantastic job, especially if she is a first-time bird. And in fact, we've got our first bar chart of the series, and I'm holding it. Look at that. There we go. So this is what they've noticed, that's the male in the morning, and that's the male in the evening, the amount of feeds. This is the female. I mean, look at that. That's a whopping amount of feeds. Goes down a bit in the evening, but as I say, consistently she does the biggest share of the feed. So I think she's a real little supermum, this one.
No.
What do you mean, no?
I mean, no.
Why?
I mean, those observations are based on what we see inside the nest box, but what's happening outside the nest box? You see, what's interesting with blue tits is that during the winter time, the males are dominant, but as soon as they start nesting, the females become dominant and the males start courtship feeding. And interestingly, when they get towards the end of the brooding period, the male starts courtship feeding the female again. So my supposition is that outside of the nest box, he's handing her the food. So it just looks like she's providing more of it.
Well, you could be right, but you are speculating, so you could also
I'm not
be
speculating.
wrong.
I read it in Birds of the Western Pale Arctic this afternoon.
Must be right, then.
It must be right. What about our marsh tits? Let's strike a contrast between these two species. Let's go live to our marsh tits nest now. So this is in a natural cavity. They very rarely use nest boxes, marsh tits, actually, and they've got a smaller brood of 6 birds. And I've got to say, Michaela, they are looking pretty close to fledging. Look at the head. I mean, there's a little bit of pin, but they're doing a bit of wing stretching there.
Sunday, I reckon.
Well,
that's what
I thought Sunday, but I'm saying
Putting my money
Saturday
on
now.
Sunday. Oh, really?
I'm saying Saturday, yeah. Now, what about the feeding rate of these birds? Because it is different from the blue tits. They're bringing in similar sorts of food. They're foraging in a different place. Blue tits up in the tree, marsh tits lower down, finding these slightly larger caterpillars, which sometimes the young struggle to swallow. But let's have a look at a graph which we've got here. Not a graph, a second bar chart here, which shows, OK, this is the feeding rate of blue tits in the morning, and this is the feeding rate of the marsh tits. Blue tits versus marsh tits. So what we actually see here is a lot less food going into the marsh tits nest. But don't despair. There are a couple of factors which I think are in play here. Firstly, in the blue tits nest, there are 11 youngsters, and in the marsh tits, there are only 6, so they don't need as much food. And also, on average, blue tits youngsters remain in the the nest for 14.3 days, whereas the marsh tits stay in there for 20 days. So they might be getting less food, but they're in the nest for a longer time, and this gives them a chance to grow a little more slowly, but equally effectively.
Both of them are doing really well at the moment. Do you know, we're going to quickly go to the Mandarin duck, Mandy the Mandarin, because just to prove that she has come back, there she is. She's all cosy on her 15 nest. All is well in the world. Now, all week, we've been following the wildlife that makes its home in the Gower Peninsula in Wales in the springtime, and we've been following the progress of nesting birds. Well, tonight is our fourth and final episode of Gower Diaries.
It's the beginning of May, and on the coast of South Wales, spring has well and truly arrived. The flowers of the Gower Peninsula are bursting into bloom. And the clifftop residents have never been busier. But whilst many birds are just starting to breed, one nest is already empty. This untidy pile of sticks was home to 4 raven chicks who hatched back in March. 4 became 3 as competition for food became too much. And finally, 6 weeks after hatching, they've taken to the air. But for a raven, the road to independence is a long one. And they still rely on their parents for food, sticking closely to their natal gully. It's a space to explore and check out new objects, early explorations that will help to hone the skills they need to survive. Their aerial aptitude in particular is a work in progress, especially the landing. Gorse is not the best place to set down for a raven. But with no lasting damage done, it's a lesson learned for this youngster. Meanwhile, a gorse specialist is much more at home. The male Dartford warbler survived the Gower's cold winter, and now with a growing family of 4, he's got no time to lose. This nest is especially precious this year. It's the only one in this valley, where normally 3 or 4 pairs nest. So far, things are looking good, and the attentive female still broods from time to time. And if all goes well, they'll have another 1 or 2 broods this year, helping the Gower population to recover from the punishing late winter freeze. Nearby, the family of stonechats are bursting out of the nest. Both male and female have worked hard to feed 5 large chicks, and now they're getting ready to go. And yet, there's no rush. The warmth of the nest is too tempting for now, and the chicks settle back down to wait for tomorrow. For the chough, there's no rush either. The preening and begging behaviour from the female affirm pair bonds and suggest a nest may be nearby. And the fulmars have settled in too, sitting patiently on eggs that will hatch in the next few weeks. A week on, and the young ravens are exploring further afield, although still reluctant to leave each other's side. For the parents, there's finally time to relax and enjoy some mutual preening, while the chicks grow in confidence, playfully testing their newfound skills. Although not quite ready to attempt the barrel rolls of their parents, this family of 5 will stay together over the summer, but in autumn, the young must leave their parents' territory to join groups of adolescent non-breeding ravens. It's been a topsy-turvy season, but the sheltered ledges and crevices of the Gower's towering cliffs have offered protection from the storms for a host of wildlife. From stoic residents to visiting summer migrants, a huge variety of species raise their young here year on year. And now the warmer weather is settling in. Life along the craggy coastline is picking up pace. For these high-rise residents, the summer holidays are about to begin.
Talking about high-rise, here on the Sherborne estate we have an abundance of natural high-rise in the form of trees, particularly ancient oaks. I have it on good authority that there are more ancient oaks in this one park than the entire nation of Switzerland. Some of those are up to 1,000 years old and can be 40 metres high. And last night it was my great pleasure to spend an evening in the penthouse suite right at the top of one of those trees. What an amazing night. It looks like an almost full moon over there. And that is a tawny owl, which if it's not in the outskirts of my tree is certainly very, very close. The classic call of the tawny, kiwi, woohoo, is actually two birds contacting each other. That kiwi, 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 kiwi is from one bird. Ideally we'd hear now, woo. I would do it myself, but I'm not very good at it. I'm really very glad that that was last night when it was warm and cool and dry, warm and cool, just warm and dry, rather than tonight where it's thunder and lightning. I mean, really the last place in the world you want to be when it's lightning is at the top of the tree covered in metal carabiners. I didn't though just want to be, crashed out in the treetop enjoying myself. I did want to find out a little bit about what was living in and around that tree. So I had one of these with me, a bat detector, and I used it, and this is what happened. So what this bat detector is doing is listening out for the frequency made by the echolocating clicks of bats. They're different depending on the species. And that's already my first one. Common pipistrelle. Superb. Very, very small and, as the name suggests, common. They've been broken into several different species now. The soprano pipistrelle is one that has a higher voice than the common pipistrelle, and we found that out through using devices like this. That's not a bat. Oh, that's a good one. Common serotine bat. So this is another quite reasonably sized bat. They mostly feed on beetles. Sometimes they'll just flop down right onto the vegetation to catch their prey. A noctule bat. These are relatively common, but high flyers. It's probably flying right over the top of us. That's great. The species count is rising. So we carried on detecting till just after midnight, until my buttocks went completely numb from sitting on that branch, and managed to tally 6 different species of bats, which is not bad. That's 30% of all of the bats believed to breed in the UK in terms of species. There's some really interesting ones as well. So we had fleeting Dorbenton's bats, which were probably heading down to Sherborne Brook to feed over the surface of the brook on insects, even to snatch insects from the water itself. But the one that got me really excited was the lesser horseshoe bat. So that's the highest in terms of frequency of any bats we have in the UK, 110 kilohertz. They tend to glean insects around the outside of the tree. And we have some roosting in an old kennels in Sherborne, just down the road from here. And we have a camera inside that roost, which I can throw to now live. So you can see these bats. Actually, that's really interesting. These bats were much more spread out earlier in the afternoon. It was hot and humid inside there. Now they're hanging all together, and that's probably because the temperatures come down. They're radiating heat between them. You can see those big old ears and the nose leaf at the front of the head. Both of those are used, well, the nose leaf for echolocation. The ears can be used purely for hearing the fluttering of the wings of moths as they fly by. We originally thought there were about 150 individuals inside this this roost, but now, from counting them, we believe that there could be as many as 300. Look at them all packed so tightly together in there. That really is incredible, and that's almost certainly down to thermoregulation. This is a maternity roost. 4/5 of the animals in there are going to be females. Almost all of those will be pregnant, and it is entirely possible that they could pup within the next couple of weeks. So that's a really good reason to keep watching the live cameras and keep watching Springwatch. You never know, there could be a bat pup born here on Springwatch. Anyway, from the brilliant barnstorming bats here in Sherborne to some bullying bonksies, let's go to Shetland and Gillian.
Welcome. This is our last night on Shetland. It's a beautiful night. We are on the island of Unst. This is as far as it's possible to go in Shetland. Behind me is the Muckleflugger Lighthouse, and over to the right of it is a rocky outcrop called Outstack. That island there is as far north as it's possible to go in all of Britain. Beyond that is just miles and miles of open sea. Our first night here, we got really quite excited because we had lots of reports of orca sightings. Sadly, they were elusive, but tonight we're here to see a bird that's really impressive and has a really big reputation. And that's the great skua. These are called bonksies over here in Shetland. Now, these birds are the size of herring gulls, but they are much thicker set and they've got loads of attitude. They are aggressive, they'll aggressively defend their territories. They really do have quite a reputation. Historically, though, on this island, they weren't very common at all. In fact, in the 1800s, the birds were persecuted. They were egg collectors and taxidermists. There's a huge demand for them, and their numbers were driven right down to the point that in 1831, there were only 3 breeding pairs left. A local landowner took it upon himself to protect those birds, and since then, this has become a real stronghold for these birds. There are 600 breeding pairs in this area, and this is one of them. This is a female. She's sitting on eggs at the moment, and there are many, many more of these. These birds are really famous at this time of year for mobbing anyone that goes anywhere near them. They will dive bomb and swoop and sometimes even draw blood. But this time of year is also about mating, and there's an altogether gentler side of these birds. Now here we see a male. He's in the foreground, and he's very submissive, and he's approaching the female. She's not looking so sure and flies off, but he's persistent. And later on, this is what happened. Now, it's possible he's not the most experienced male because you can see he really struggles to get a foothold there. And the female looks like she's really trying to help him out there. But eventually, with some persistence, success. Behind me, on the headland here, there's a grassy, gentle slope. That's where the birds are nesting. And you can see, when you get a sense of the geography of this place, why this is such a good spot for them. Because across the water over there is Shetland's biggest gannet colony. There are over 12,000 breeding pairs. That's called hermit nests, and that's what the birds are after. The bonksies will cross this water and try and intercept gannets as they come back from foraging trips, and what they're doing is trying to steal their meals from them. This is what it looks like. They will gang up on these birds, on the gannets, and they will harass them to the point that the gannets are forced to regurgitate their meal. I've got a pellet here. This is actually a regurgitate, not from a gannet, but from a bonksi. Now, if this was a meal from a gannet, I would expect to see lots of fish bones and scales. But if you look on the end here and here, these are feathers. And this is something that's very, very unique to the bonksies. They're not just stealing the meals from the gannets, they're also going out and actively hunting the birds themselves. Now, around here, There's not just gannets, but also thousands of breeding pairs of puffins. These are much smaller birds, and the Bonxies will cruise along the coastline looking for the birds. And this one has got a puffin here, and it's drowning it in the water before making a meal of it. Now, it looks brutal, but this is the secret to their success. And of course, these birds later on in the spring, their chicks will be hatching, and these are the meals they'll be able to return for their chicks. So this is a very successful strategy, and it's why these birds are doing so well here. So as I said, later on, their chicks will be hatching, but for now, let's see how spring is springing further south in the country, down in Sherborne, with Chris and Michaela.
Fabulous Bonxies. But I'll tell you something, Gillian. I'll tell you how spring is springing, because I've noticed that all week you're right up north, exposed. You've had way better weather than we've had down here in Gloucestershire.
Sunny there today, pouring down here.
It doesn't matter where you are in the UK, you've all noticed that spring has been late. And a couple of days ago, we asked you to let us know when you noticed 3 particular migratory birds arriving in your area. And they were these 3 birds. We wanted to know about the house martin, the swift and the cuckoo. And, you know, over 1,000 of you let us know when you'd noticed those 3 birds.
Yeah, and I've got yet another bar chart here, bar chart 3 for the evening. Pretty good show, pretty good show. We summed all of the reports together and just summarised it this way. So look, 25% of the reports that you sent in said that you thought that your birds had arrived early. 20% thought that they were about the normal time, but 55% said that you thought that your birds, those house martins, swifts and cuckoos, were late. Interestingly, Michaela, amongst those that were early, significant numbers of cuckoo. So people thinking cuckoos did turn up early this year.
I just want to read you a quick house martin tweet, though, that came from Rachel Alcroft. She's in North Yorkshire. House martins nesting in every house on the street by now. Last year, this year, there are none. And most of the swift ones said that they were a week late. That seemed to be quite a consistent theme. And in fact, we can verify that by Bristol Swifts, that run a website for Swift enthusiasts. They said the same. And if you remember, in 2015, we had cameras on one of their nest boxes in Bristol on swifts. And if we look at the screen here, this is what we noticed. 2015, that's the one on the left. The birds had arrived by the 2nd of May and they'd laid by the 30th. Same day, same nest box is on the right. They arrived on the 18th of May and they still haven't laid.
They still haven't laid because they're probably not in good enough condition to produce those eggs. So what's causing this delay? Well, it's early days yet in terms of finding the culprit, but the thought is that there have been a number of significant storms, not just here in the UK, but all the way across France and Spain, the continental area of Europe. All of these birds have to pass through there. Indeed, they have to get out of Africa, because all of these species we're talking about are what we call sub-Saharan migrants. They jump over the Sahara Desert to spend the winter there. There's also reports of storms south of the Sahara, and this could have had a catastrophic impact on these birds' migration. One other sub-Saharan migrant, which has made it back to the UK, I'm not sure whether they're late or how many numbers have arrived this year, is our favourite songster, and it's also a favourite of one of our wildlife sound recordists, Gary Moore.
Sound is so often overlooked, but it's definitely important. For me, pictures tell only part of the story, but if you close your eyes and listen, the final chapter is written. And a whole new natural world assaults the senses. For me, some sounds are worth travelling for, and I've come to Pulborough Brooks in West Sussex to hear one specific sound. The bird that we're here to attempt to record tonight is definitely my favourite bird, without a shadow of a doubt. Lots of reasons why I like this bird. It's a bird that I've really got to know quite well over the last 8 years. Massively in decline. Probably only sings for between 4 and 6 weeks a year. Not a particularly big bird, not attractive, But for me, it's the sheer complexity and the quality of the song that I really like. Most people's year is marked by birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas, special events. But for me, a real mark in the calendar is April, when the nightingales return. But their song is a sound that's becoming harder and harder to hear. We know that the number of nightingales are falling. A 91% decline since the 1970s, I think, is a statistic. But for the last 2 years, I've had no birds on my patch in Gloucestershire. They've completely gone. I've got a 10-year-old son. Last year I took him for the first time, thinking he's 9 now, he's old enough, and there were no nightingales. And then again this year I thought, oh, maybe that's just, you know, there's been some issues, maybe it's the wrong night. So I took him back to the spot. No nightingales. And as he walked away, he said to me, Dad, what does a nightingale sound like? So I played him on my phone. Where'd that come from? That's really weird, I didn't expect that. Yeah, so I played a bit from the phone. It was like, you know, there's me, professional sound recordist, and I'm having to play my son, a nightingale, recording from my bloody phone. So, yeah. So I guess I'm just scared that other kids will never know, you know. So this year, I've had to travel over 100 miles just to hear this bird, but I want to hear it at its very best. Everybody tells me nightingales sing during the day, you know, and how wonderful it is, and they get great views. But for me, that's not what I want. I want to come between the hours of 10 o'clock maybe and 1 in the morning. The planes have stopped, the cars have stopped. No extraneous noises apart from the bird that I want, the nightingale. Oh, that's good. Why more people don't do this, I've got no idea. I mean, look, here we are on a nature reserve and we're the only ones here. Once you've heard it, you don't forget it, do you? Once you've really heard it. Very little noise pollution. Imagine the information the female's getting out of that song. If she knows that that's going to be a potential good partner who's got a good spot, probably good nesting area, good food supply, and that's all coming from this song. The more complex the song, the more attractive it is to the females. Not seeing this bird doesn't matter, because for me, it's just all about the sound. It's over there singing its heart out, and that's all I need to know. Nightingales belong to a family of birds called chats. Stone chat, wind chat, even the blue throat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the chat and just let you listen to this.
It's an absolutely beautiful sound, but 91% decline since the 1970s. I mean, there's no doubt about it, that is a shocking figure. But as Gary said, the best time to hear a nightingale sing is at night. But why do they sing at night? Well, there's two possible reasons. The first is that sound waves travel further in cooler air, so it gives them a larger audience. Their voice can be heard much further away to attract a potential mate. And the other thing is very few birds sing at night, so it means they've got that stage all to themselves. But here's the remarkable thing. In a study, they found out that one male had 600 different sounds and 250 different phrases. But here's the even more remarkable thing, is each time they perform, it's unique and they never repeat that performance. It's absolutely amazing. And it's so loud. It's 95 decibels, which is about as loud as a motorbike 25 feet away. And that's this tiny little bird. So they want it to be loud, they want it to be complex. And the more complex, the harder it is to sing, which means they're fitter and stronger. And that's exactly what the females are looking for.
It's like the clash in a bush. That's how loud it is.
It's nothing like the Clash.
It's like the Clash in a bush. They're so loud. It's like Guns N' Roses. They really, really pump it out. I found this book earlier today on my collection. This is British Birds in Their Haunts by the Reverend C.A. John. It was published in 1885. Bit of controversy from the Rev. He says, it's a disputed point whether the nightingale's song should be considered joyous or melancholy. This must always remain a question of taste. My own opinion is that the piteous wailing note, which is its most characteristic nature, casts a shade of sadness, as it were, over the whole song, even those portions which gush with the most exuberant gladness.
I know what he means. It's sort of a minor key. It does have a slight melancholy feel.
Well, you say that, but the female nightingales love those melancholy whistles. In fact, it's the constancy, the acoustic constancy of those whistles which most excite the female nightingales. And when they find a male that produces that acoustic constancy, they get increasingly fidgety and frisky. So they like it. Question though, how do birds sing? Well, we're going to demonstrate it with some extraordinary models. The first of which is here. Now, the two red balls represent the lungs. These are the bronchial tubes that lead to them, and this is the trachea. And this is a facsimile of human anatomy. And, Michaela, I'm going to give you that one. There we are. So, look, squeeze the lungs. Yep, and it produces sound because in our human trachea here, we have an organ called the larynx, and inside that we have vocal cords, and it's that which allows us to produce sounds, but only when we expel air. And I can prove this. Michaela, give us a little bit of a song, you know.
La 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 la.
Okay, now try and do it breathing in.
La. But you can't.
So this means that when it comes to speed of song, we can only do it whilst we're breathing out, and we only have one opportunity because we've got the one larynx with the one set of vocal cords. Birds, on the other hand, are very different. These are the bird's lungs here, and again the trachea and the bronchial tubes, but note there's no larynx here, no vocal cords. Instead, what the birds have are these organs here called syrinx, and they have one, at least one, in each of the bronchial tubes. Now, on the side of that bronchial tube, there's a tympanum, same as the eardrum. It vibrates under the control of muscles, and birds can choose to vibrate that, and it's this which produces the sound. But what's interesting is that they can produce sound whilst they're breathing out as well as breathing in. So they can produce twice as much sound twice as quickly. But what's more, because they've got another one on this side, they can virtually duet with themselves by producing these notes at the same time. And some species of birds, in fact, have two syrinx on each of the bronchial tubes, and one in the middle. They can produce 5 different sets of notes at the same time. And this allows them an extraordinary voice. But of course, it's not just about the anatomy of their trachea and the bronchial tubes, it's also to do with the brain. And we see that birds with a larger, higher brain area can produce more complex songs. Birds like this canary. And let's listen to the song of the canary. A little bit like the nightingale, with those very rapidly produced notes. But what's interesting for the female canary are what we call sexy syllables. And this is where the male canary is producing a note with this side of its body and this at the same time. So this little canary is in fact duetting with itself, producing sexy syllables that's really exciting the female.
I've got to say that is not a sexy noise, but that is an amazing explanation, and it never ceases to amaze me. Tiny little birds make all that sound by using what Chris has explained.
And we have to
Brilliant.
say hats off to our researchers and runners who spent a lot of time making these excellent props today, and of course they are available on certain websites.
Oh, go on, keep going, because I feel some songs coming on. I think maybe we should do the Springwatch musical. You and I could do the orchestra, Gillian could be the soprano, and Steve could be the bass. Oops.
Do you know what? I think I'm fine. A woodland like this, a British woodland, is an environment that the rain just can't spoil. In fact, if anything, when it's wet, I think it has more atmosphere. It feels more alive. And it is an incredibly verdant habitat. There's so much going on here, and particularly in terms of invertebrates, the little things that rule the world. So they're absolutely everywhere, and one way that you can gain their attention and get them to come to you is by using one of these. This is a moth trap. So last night, while I was up in my oak tree, I had one of these down the bottom attracting in moths, and when I came down this morning and opened it up, it was full of them. But why would you want to see moths? I mean, they're just those little brown things that eat through your clothing, right? Wrong. Well, to hopefully prove that that's wrong, we took some of those moths back to our macro studio and they got some amazing shots of them. So this one here is a poplar hawk moth, and this is in the Sphingidae, the sphinx moth group, and it does kind of look like a mythical creature, doesn't it? And we've got also a white ermine here. I had one of these actually landing on my table today while I was having my lunch. And this is a snout, a little name for a rather dramatic bug. And that, in my hand, is that poplar hawk moth. Right there, look, it hasn't gone away yet, although it is vibrating its wings and could well be about to fly. And the hind wings back here actually have a red flash on them, which can be used as an intimidating signal to drive away any predator. So they are absolutely fabulous. And seriously, if you're into natural history, you want to be into moths. There are tens of thousands of different species, and there is always something new to learn. A woodland like this is kind of like a natural music hall, and at the right time of day, it's almost like there's an orchestra with a choir in full voice. And the best of all times is surely dawn. Spending a night in an ancient tree, the best thing is to wake up to the dawn chorus. It's 4:30 in the morning. It's proper misty out there, but I'm guessing that will burn off when the sun comes up. And I'm enjoying a perfect dawn chorus. I think that there is nowhere in the world that does the dawn chorus like here in Britain. It's one of the things we are better at than anywhere else in the world. Like queuing, losing at football. It's been a really rather wonderful night in my nest up here in the treetops. And I don't want to go down really, but I can practically smell the fresh coffee. Birdsong's obviously a really big thing for naturalists, but it's not just because of its beauty. It can be really helpful in IDs. So for example, you took two birds, a willow warbler and a chiffchaff, and you put them next to each other. They're quite superficially similar, right up until the second that they open their beaks. The chiffchaff has a song that couldn't be more simple. It says its own name, chiffchaff, 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 whereas the willow warbler sounds like this. It has a melodic song that's almost like a waterfall, the tumbling cadence that goes on and on and on. It doesn't have the flourish at the end like the chaffinch, and it is a wonderful, wonderful song, one which we could well hear in this wood, because just a stone's throw away from here, we have a willow warbler nest. I can throw to that live right now. So it's going to be really sodden because it's at the base of an oak tree, it's in amongst a whole bunch of brambles, and you can see it's pretty wet and miserable in there. In fact, the chicks themselves look pretty waterlogged, but they will become alert as soon as the parents come in, and the parents have been doing a fantastic job of feeding them. Both the male and the female have been coming in, and in one single hour they came in 23 times to feed these chicks. They're a real insect specialist, so they're bringing in lots and lots of bugs for the chicks. And though these animals are in decline in the south of England, let's hope that our brood here have success. Anyway, from our magical woodland to another piece of forest up in Shetland and Gillian.
My name is Bryden Thomason. I grew up on the island of Fetler in Shetland. The diversity of habitats that we're really well known for in Shetland is obviously the coastal life, the otters thriving along the shores, the seabirds along the cliffs, and the moorland. I mean, amazing diversity of habitats, but it's all open and flat. I now live on Unst, most northerly island in Britain, with my family next to this beautiful woodland called Halligarth. The house of Halligarth here next door was built in the 1830s by the Edmondson family, and the woodland was established about a decade later, about the 1840s. The woodland was planted because there was no other woodlands. These were people who could really see the potential here. And here we are a couple of 100 years later, and it is actually a woodland in Shetland. You're talking about maybe 50 square metres or more of a sycamore stand. And outside it doesn't look like that much, but when you're inside here in Shetland, it just feels like another world. We're privileged with the diversity of wildlife we have here, and also one of the best places in Britain to study bird migration. That's come to be a pretty big passion of mine. We're so far away from mainland Britain and mainland Europe, Norway to the east, that birds that are blown off course, travelling hours, days even, to get anywhere, and then they see Shetland just right out there. You can imagine that they're probably pretty pleased to find Halligarth in such an open expanse. So for me, I mean, if coming into the woodland here, I mean, it's something I just feel like I just have to do every morning, because I just love to get in here. Even if you know there was nothing yesterday, there's always that chance that you might find something that could have come in overnight. You've got to be optimistic and enthusiastic, just because you never know what might have turned up. The beautiful thing about the spring migration is that we might get things like golden oriole in here. It's one of the best places in Shetland to see golden oriole in spring. We've had things like bee-eater in here. One of the most special birds I've seen in here was a Baltimore oriole. That's an American species. That was a really special bird, that one. One of my favourite autumn migrants is the yellow-browed warbler. They arrive here all the way from Asia, year after year. Halligarth is a particularly good site for them, because these are leaf warblers, so sycamores are one of their favourite habitats on migration especially. I enjoy to try and capture. I might be taking photos or just being in here through the seasons. We're blessed sometimes in winter, for example, we northern lights, the merry dancers as we call them in Shetland. I'm sure most Shetlanders would say the same. I couldn't imagine myself, I wouldn't ever want to imagine myself living anywhere else. And it's a really lovely thing for me and my wife Ella to bring up our bairns in their family home next to the woodland that she grew up playing in, and that's a really special thing.
What a magical film on a magical evening. That woodland, Halligarth, is just a few miles down the road from where we are, but could this be more different, this wide open space on the very north of the island of Unst? Earlier, we featured the great skuas, the bonxies as they're called here, and we saw the mating and the breeding and hunting. Behind me is something quite different. There's a group of birds back there, and this is called a club. Think of it as a youth club. These are sub-adults, they're immatures. They take about 3 or 4 years to reach maturity. And these birds, while they're doing that, are in this holding area. And this is where they learn to be bonxies. Now, this was filmed on a misty morning, and you can see that they come in and there's lots of posturing, lots of aggressive behavior. This is they're establishing a hierarchy. They hold their wings up, that's quite a dominant posture, and it helps to build their confidence. They're not actually defending any territories here, they're just practicing the behavior they'll need as adults in order to do so. Now, the males will fight, they'll get into scraps, and obviously the hope is that there may be females watching, because this is also the time that they pair bond. So this is such a successful place for Bonxies. There are over 6,000 breeding pairs in Shetland. That's 40% of the world population. They have a bad reputation, but they're amazing birds, and I have huge amounts of respect for them. And it's really great to see them doing well here. And not just them, but all the other wildlife we've seen here this week. For now, it's back to Sherborne, to Chris and Michaela.
Thank you very much, Gillian. I have to say I'm rather envious of her week up there on Shetland. Some fantastic animals and also some brilliant messages. All that stuff about plastics, of course, which we must take to heart. And the call out for us to take part in the Seabird survey. Details on our website. Don't forget about that.
Now, it started to rain again. We've come out, but let's be honest, most people head for cover when it starts to pour. Very few people really embrace it. However, one such person, Melissa Harrison, who's an author, not only embraces it, but she's been so inspired by walking in the rain, she's written a book about it.
Because rain tends to keep most of us indoors, few people witness what happens out in the countryside on a long, wet afternoon. But every day, as natural and as inevitable as breathing, weather fronts form, clouds gather, and rain falls. It changes the way our countryside looks, smells and sounds, and how the living things in it behave. To write a book about rain, I spent a year storm chasing, going out in all sorts of wet weather and in different types of landscape. Most of the time, I had the countryside entirely to myself. I found that to experience the natural world on fair days and never foul is to hear only half its story. To me, it's like only listening to music in a major key. An occasional pleasure of a shower in spring or summer is petrichor. The rich green smell produced when precipitation hits warm, dry earth. It's a mixture of plant oils and chemicals from soil bacteria. And so captivating is it to humans, given its ancient associations with growth and plenty, that it's even been bottled as a fragrance. Rain may sometimes feel like an inconvenience, but at this time of year, it's essential. Spring rain gets everything growing. Deep in the damp earth, seeds are germinating. Wildflowers are beginning to bloom, and insects breed. Birds are at their most active, building nests and defending their territories. Everywhere, life is getting on with the grand business of growing and reproducing. I've learned to look out for the plants that warn of a coming cloudburst. Damp air can subtly change the texture of a field. Some wildflowers close their petals at the approach of rain. Dandelions fold up to preserve their nectar and pollen. At this time of year, the fields near my home are full of hares. Instead of sheltering from showers underground, as rabbits do, they create shallow scrapes called forms, in which they rest with their black-tipped ears flat back. Fortunately, they have a special layer of fur that keeps off the worst of the wet. Really heavy precipitation can knock butterflies from the air, damaging their wings or leaving them at risk from opportunistic predators. So at the first sign of rain, they tuck themselves away, clinging to the undersides of leaves or creeping into tall grass. My year of getting wet deepened my relationship with nature, and it left me more resilient too. I'm no longer just a fair weather walker. I can overcome the impulse for comfort and convenience that insulates us not only from the bad in life, but from much of the good. And anyway, as the famous fell walker Alfred Wainwright once said, there's no such thing as bad weather, only unsuitable clothing.
Wise words. No such thing as bad weather, it's just bad clothing. Now we're going to go to our goldcrest nest because we are a bit concerned about this goldcrest nest because it is very exposed. It's very dark in there, so we've had to go to infrared camera. They look all right though, don't they?
I think they do look all right. After that drenching, I'm very surprised, but I'm very pleased too.
But what we have noticed is we've only seen one adult at a time on that nest, but that's actually not surprising because goldcrests are serial nesters. And so that's the first nest, and this is how it works. Both the male and female will mate that nest. The female will brood those chicks, and then the male will go and make a new nest, a second nest. And the female will eventually go on that second nest, lay the eggs, and the male will continue to feed these chicks, in which are the first brood. But here's the remarkable thing, is once they've fledged, he'll still feed them for 2 to 3 weeks, which means that he might be feeding the fledged chicks as well as the newly hatched chicks, which is incredible. And they can do that 3 times, 3 nests, and have about, what, 20 chicks in a season.
And they need to do that because these, remember, this is Britain's smallest bird, and come the winter, any cold weather means that there are colossal losses. So they've got to go into that winter with an absolute surfeit of young birds. Trying to sex them, though, tell the difference between the male and the female, is really tricky. You need to see the crest erect. If it's fully yellow, then it's the female, but if it puts it up and there's a base of the orange in it, then you know it's the male. But, of course, when they're on our nest, it's not doing that, so it's very difficult for us to tell you which one's which. We're very excited here, because next week we've got something that we've wanted for a long time, a programme which is tailored especially for young people. So between 1:30 and 2 o'clock next week on the Red Button and our internet site, we're going to have Wild Academy, especially for schools, and presented by Maddie Moat. And here she is telling us all about it.
This year, Springwatch wants you to join our Wild Academy, a series of live shows full of ideas and challenges to encourage children to go wild.
You ready for a wild mission?
Yeah! There'll be some familiar faces.
It's amazing how many more shapes and patterns you pick up that you just didn't even realise were there.
Inspirational people to infuse the next generation of wildlife warriors.
I would be lying if I said I didn't get attached to the animals.
And of course, plenty of wildlife. We want as many schools and classrooms to tune in as possible.
Whoa!
We're live on the Springwatch website and BBC Red Button for 2 weeks, Monday to Thursday at 1:30 p.m, starting this Monday. So, come and join us.
So make sure you tune in on Monday at 1:30 on the internet and on the Red Button as well. Steve, you're looking pretty good considering you only had, what, an hour and a half sleep in that tree?
I don't feel that good. My brain is definitely not working that well.
And great to see the bats.
It is. Should we have a look at them live, see what's going on with them?
Oh, they look so fab, don't they?
They are so tightly packed in there at the moment, and one lone bat hanging above all of them. I think hanging on to one of its roost mates by one single toe. Oh, no, it is hanging on to the wood above it, but it's moving the wings things around, it's quite mobile. The rest of them, though, just seem to be out for the count.
We'll see more of them next week. We've come to the end of our first week of shows, and Gillian won't be in Shetland next week. She'll be moving on to somewhere else.
Next week, I'll be travelling down to Yorkshire to see our industrial past transform into a wildlife haven.
My week on Springwatch is sadly done. Massive thank you to all of you for having me as part of the family. I am passing on the baton to this absolute legend. It is, of course, the hero that is Yolo Williams.
Steve, it's been great having you. Thank you so much for bringing all your passion, enthusiasm, and for getting cold and wet and keeping us in the studio. Next week, we've got farmland birds, some very special creatures. Yellow hammers, skylarks, yellow wagtails, absolutely fantastic. Do check out our live cameras over the course of the weekend on the website, on Red Button. Tweet us, Facebook us, Instagram us as well, and we'll be back next week on Monday for a lot more Springwatch. Until then, good night.
Bye.